Good evening. My name is Lawrence Harris, and I have the proud honor of serving as the Chief of Community Engagement and Strategic Partnerships for the Clark County School District. We begin our program this evening with a welcome from our interim superintendent, Dr. Sedona Thomas.
Good evening. Thank you all for joining us tonight, whether it's in person or virtually. We want to share information regarding our plan to bring students back to in-person learning. The Clark County School District has worked through unprecedented times and has a plan a safe return to school amidst the global health crisis. Continually evaluating and balancing the conditions of Athens Clark County and the need to support our students, families, and staff. We are confident in our ability to safely bring students and staff back to their classrooms. We recognize that we cannot eliminate all risks, but we will implement as many infection control measures as we can. The health and safety of our students and our staff remains our highest priority. Since the beginning of the pandemic, CCSD has watched other counties, both neighboring and across the state, who have returned to school, and we have learned from their experiences. We have monitored local, regional, and statewide COVID data and statistics. We have listened to and learned from public health officials, guided by data from region and state, combined with recommendations from the Georgia Department of Education, the Centers for Disease Control, and the Georgia Department of Public Health, and the potential effects of having college students return to campus. The district decided to start the school year in a virtual environment for all students and all staff. This decision proved to be the correct course of action as cases spiked in December. The reopening metrics supported our health and safety during that time, and as you all remember, the metrics were designed to pivot as necessary based on public health guidance. In late September, the CDC released new guidelines for school reopening. These guidelines confirmed the need to monitor the number of cases per 100,000 and the positivity rate, both of which Clark County was already doing. But they also recommended that schools consider additional indicators to guide reopening decisions. Some of these additional indicators include the district's ability to implement mitigation measures, the percent change in cases from week to week, and a variety of community factors, including hospital bed capacities and recent community spikes in infections. As we align our discussions to the CDC guidelines, we have worked with local public health officials. They help to guide and confirm our decisions on how and when to reopen. As the CDC notes, the reopening indicators should not be used in isolation, nor should they be viewed as hard cutoffs by school district decision makers. They serve as guideposts for reopening discussions, and we have used them as such. We know that the best place for our students to be is in their classrooms, and we are confident that through planning and infection mitigation measures, we will be able to bring them back safely. We will continue to offer virtual instruction for those families that wish for their child or children to remain at home. The impact of a missed semester of in-person learning is long-lasting and has profound consequences, not just for our students, but also for our community. Our community cannot afford to have a lost generation of students. We have made too much progress to go backwards, so we must continue to move forward in a safe manner. We know that a successful return to in-person instruction will require the help of everyone in our community. These are some of the ways that you, as parents and community members, can help us. Please keep your children at home when they're sick. Please report all cases of COVID in your household to your child's school. If your child is sick at school, we really need to be able to reach you. Work with your schools. Ensure that we have the best contact methods for you or other individuals who can pick up your child. And like we tell our students, we need you to remember the 3 W's. wash your hands, and watch your distance. As Clark County School District, we commit to transparency in our communication about COVID cases within the district. We commit to continuing to work with our local health department to guide decisions about classroom quarantines and, if needed, school closures. We commit to pivoting our plans as recommended by public health officials. And as always, we commit to providing a quality education to all of our students. I would like to end my remarks simply by saying thank you to our amazing staff. Without you, this would not be possible. We have seen you working hard on virtual instruction, and now we see you working hard to return our schools back to a place where our students can enter every day. We see you and we appreciate you. To the teachers and administrators who have worked tirelessly to create new models for learning, we say thank you. To the nutrition and transportation team who have pivoted to ensure that our students can continue to receive nutritional meals, we say thank you. To our custodians who have worked from the beginning to ensure that our buildings are clean and safe, to school nurses, our school counselors, our school social workers, our school psychologists, and other student support staff who are always thinking outside the box, we thank you. To all of the staff working behind the scenes every day, we say thank you. And finally, to our parents and guardians, thank you for your patience, for your understanding, for your questions, even though sometimes tough, they've challenged us to be better. And thank you for your support as we continue to navigate this new environment. Thank you for working alongside us and for being our team. I know that we are indeed better together, and together we will do this. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas. Tonight's program is about providing information to our families on the various aspects of students returning to our buildings on November 9th. We will have several presentations by some of our district leaders, and at the end, we will invite you to get your questions answered. While we will not be able to answer all questions tonight, we will answer as many as we can, and we'll post responses to the remaining questions Friday morning on our website. With that, I would like to introduce our first speaker of the evening, our Director of Nursing Services, Mrs. Amy Roar.
Good evening, Clark County School District families, staff. My name is Amy Roar, and I'm the Director of School Nursing for the Clark County School District, which means I have the pleasure of working alongside 23 awesome professional school nurses who are going to help us return to school safely as we try to do this work in unprecedented times. So as we look to return to school, we have to really consider our health and safety measures that we're taking because as Dr. Thomas said, health and safety remains our top priority for both our students and for our staff. We have been working with public health experts along the way, and I'm not going to go too much into this because I know we've said it so much, but there are two different avenues to look at and evaluate as we reopen schools. The first one is our infection mitigation measures or our infection control. What are we going to do in our schools to reduce the spread of infection, whether that's COVID or flu or strep throat? There's multiple ways we can do this. These include things like PPE, washing your hands, respiratory etiquette, we like to say catching our cough, social distancing or physical distancing, and then the cleaning and sanitation of our buildings. Those are the things that we can put in place as we return to reduce the spread of infection. The other side of this conversation is once we have a known infection, what's our response to it? And how do we handle people in our building who have potentially been exposed to that known infection? So these include things like health screenings, communication, how do we communicate to families when there's been a positive case in our school, and what's the response to the virus? What does our COVID response in an effort to control the spread in the building. These are the issues that I'm going to discuss tonight. And we're going to start with face coverings, which is our most basic infection mitigation measure we can do. We know, everyone knows that face coverings reduce the spread of infection. So we require that they be worn by all students and staff while indoors and within 6 feet of other individuals. That's a requirement across the board. It's supported by DPH and CDC guidelines. We do recognize that students need mask sprays throughout the day, especially younger students, but really all students and staff. So we have worked hard to work mask breaks into our schedule, whether it's pre-Kers taking a nap, or students eating at lunch, or perhaps the first few minutes of recess can be a socially distanced time that kids can play freely outside without wearing their mask. We're doing everything we can to make our days as safe as possible. I will say we know that we can't eliminate all the risks, right? There's going to be kids who don't wear their masks correctly, or kids who have trouble keeping it on, and we just have to constantly remind and educate and show by example and do our best to keep our buildings safe when it comes to face coverings. Staff are expected to wear face coverings as well. Requirements for students. We are going to provide face coverings if somebody doesn't have them. So the expectation is that your child will come to school with a face covering every day. But if there's a barrier to accessing one, or if falls in a mud puddle on the way to the school bus, we're going to have some extras available at all school sites for students and staff who may need one. Other PPE that the district has procured for students and staff, should they need it, are goggles, gloves, gowns. We anticipate these to be used by our staff, but there's going to be a supply closet or cart. I'm not sure what it will look like, but there's going to be a supply stash located in every school of extra PPE that can be used by anybody who needs it within the school day. The nurses will have additional PPE as well. They have face shields and face coverings and surgical masks and goggles and gowns and gloves, and they also have N95 masks, which I'm thankful and would like to express my gratitude to Piedmont Athens Regional for their generosity in supplying all the school nurses in our county with N95 masks, as well as fit testing us all to make sure that they fit our faces and are working correctly. So thank you, Piedmont. The second mitigation measure that we can do after PPE and face coverings would be washing our hands, which is super simple. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I want everybody to understand that this is perhaps the most important thing people can do to prevent getting sick. So we're going to increase our education measures in our buildings around hand washing by posting signs, by having sessions about hand washing, showing hand washing videos, constant reminders from teachers and staff, and just making sure that we really enforce good hand washing practices. Anytime we enter or leave our classroom, enter or leave the playground, go to lunch and come back, and all these kind of pivot points during the day, we will be washing our hands. The next mitigation measure is social distancing or physical distancing. And honestly, this is the key to reducing the amount of individuals exposed during our school day. So when we talk about having quarantine classes, it's because we weren't able to physically distance classes. And we cannot physically distance everyone in our building, but just like face coverings, we're going to do the best we can. Some of our classrooms may be too small or have too many students, but there's ways to work around that. There's ways to think outside the box by grouping students in small groups together and making sure they move from that small group throughout the day. But as much as possible, students will be socially distanced throughout their school day. Every school is going to have a waiting room for children who are sick. So the expectation is that if a child is sick and experiencing symptoms of possible COVID-19, they would go to the school nurse, and if deemed that they need to go home, the school nurse would send them to a waiting space where they can await for their parent or guardian to pick them up. Now, switching over to the other side of that first slide, we're going to talk about our response to the infection and people who may have been exposed. So one of the things that we can do is identify COVID infections as we enter our buildings, and that is through health screenings. Luckily, Clark County has a full-time school nurse in every school. I am so proud to say that. And the nurses are able to conduct on-site health screenings to students and staff as needed. We plan to do daily temperature checks on all elementary school students. This is because we know that many times elementary age kids will be symptomatic if they are COVID positive. So it is an effective tool to screen for temperatures for children at the elementary age level. School nurses may also do randomized health screenings throughout the day. So if there's, say, a class that has an individual who's tested positive, but not everybody is required to quarantine, we may hone in on the remaining students in that class and do health screenings daily for the next 14 days just to make sure that we're not missing any potential infections. We also have telehealth this year, which is very exciting. We have a telehealth team of 2 fantastic nurses. We have a telehealth team of 2 fantastic nurses who can take equipment around to all the schools in the school district and call in visits to physicians. They have the ability to do COVID testing, strep testing, flu testing, everything right in the school clinic as a convenience to parents and also to staff. So this is an exciting opportunity that we can implement this year as we help to triage students and staff who may be feeling ill during the school day. Staff screenings are the same. Staff are expected to stay home when they're sick. That's pretty simple and self-explanatory. But if they should fall ill during the school day, they are welcome to report to the school nurse who can do a health screening on them and recommend any actions based on the results of that health screening. Any students or staff who are experiencing symptoms of COVID-19 that aren't otherwise explained. So you could have a cough, which is a symptom of COVID-19, but if you have allergies or asthma, that cough may be normal for you. So what we said is if you're exhibiting symptoms of COVID-19 that aren't otherwise explained, you'll be asked to go home and engage in a precautionary isolation. These individuals can return to work per DOH guidelines or with a physician's note stating that it's a non-COVID related illness. Communication is the second part of our infection response, and we as a school district pledge to our community that we will communicate transparently about our COVID cases and our numbers throughout the district and in our schools. So anytime a student in a building reports a positive COVID case, we will send a notification to all families who have kids in that school. So you will receive an FYI, so to speak, that there has been a positive case in the building. However, your child will not be notified or will not be a close contact unless you've been otherwise notified. So just, a heads up, parents, this is what's going on. But if your child has been identified as a close contact, through the process of contact tracing, which all of our school nurses are trained contact tracers by the Johns Hopkins contact tracing class, then we will send an additional notification to your family as well as follow up with a phone call to make sure that everybody understands the necessity to quarantine as well as what those rules and regulations look like. We will continue to provide a weekly update of COVID numbers on our school district website. We currently put that out on Friday, and we're committed to continuing to do that. We'll let you know how many students and staff have had to isolate or quarantine across the district. Every school will have a COVID response team, and this team is going to be made up of a few different school building members who will come together and work collaboratively to manage any COVID-related issues that arise during the school day. The district will also have a district-based COVID response team that will be led by myself, but will include the help of some of my colleagues, as well as a district-wide contact tracer. My contact information is on this slide. You can feel free to contact me with questions or concerns. This next slide represents our flow chart of the action that we will take. So the initial step is to screen somebody, and if they're sick, we'll send them home, as we've already discussed. If they're sick with potential COVID symptoms, we will place them in a waiting space away from others for their parent or guardian to pick them up. If the school receives a notification that somebody is positive for COVID, then the school nurse or another member of the response team at the school will gather any information necessary. This includes bus routes and seating charts and class schedules so that they can communicate through a report up to the district about the details of that particular situation. The district and the school COVID response team will work together to navigate through all the details of contact tracing and determine which students or staff, any individuals that need to isolate or quarantine depending on the situation. Again, at the end, the district and the school will communicate to staff and students and families in the building all necessary information. If there becomes a situation that we do not feel comfortable or feel like we need public health guidance on, if we don't feel comfortable determining the outcome of our response, we will reach out to public health. We are committed to doing that and ask them to help guide us as we look to make a decision about closing schools or quarantining whole classrooms. So everybody hopefully understands quarantine and isolation, but just in case you don't, quarantine is for individuals who have been exposed to the virus, and it's a 14-day quarantine period. And that's because COVID-19 has a 14-day incubation period, which means from day one that you're exposed to somebody, you could get sick anytime in the next 14 days. That's why it's very important for individuals who we know have been exposed to a confirmed case to quarantine at home for 14 days. Isolation is for individuals who are sick with COVID, individuals who have confirmed or diagnosed COVID. Isolation is a 10-day period, and that confuses people, but it's actually quite simple. The infectious period for the coronavirus is 12 days, and it starts 2 days before symptom onset. So because of that, what I call negative 2 days, a 10-day isolation period from the day they started to feel sick is required for somebody who has COVID. If you have COVID, you are either asymptomatic, meaning not sick, mildly or moderately ill, or severely ill. Most people are mildly to moderately ill. If you're severely ill, according to CDC guidelines, you perhaps have been hospitalized, have severe shortness of breath, or difficulty breathing. But for the point of tonight's conversation, if you have COVID and you have mild to moderate illness, then you have to isolate for 10 days. You can return to school after that 10-day period, but you also have to have had 24 hours without a fever and no fever-reducing medications on board like Tylenol or Advil, and you have to be feeling better. Your symptoms have to be improved. If you've had severe or critical illness with COVID, then that 10 days changes to 20. You can return to school 20 days after your symptoms first appeared or your positive test date. You still have to be 24 hours fever-free, and you still have to be feeling better in order to come back. If you're one of those individuals who test positive for COVID but has no symptoms, feels fine, doesn't even think that they're sick, you would be considered an asymptomatic individual with confirmed COVID. These individuals still have to isolate for 10 days since the positive laboratory test. Because they don't have any symptoms, they don't have to wait the 24-hour fever-free or be feeling better before they return, but they do have to wait through the 10-day isolation period. On the right side of that screen are asymptomatic persons who have had a known exposure. This is the vast majority of folks. These are the people that have to quarantine. They don't have COVID that they know of, but they've been exposed to somebody with COVID. They have to go home and quarantine for 14 days, and they can return to school after that quarantine period is over, assuming they remain asymptomatic. If at any time during that 14-day quarantine they start to become ill, then they would convert to a 10-day isolation at that point. It is recommended that in the 14-day quarantine, the individual gets tested for COVID between days 6 and 10. We know that most individuals will become sick on between day 5 and 7. So doing a test between days 6 and 10 catches the majority of those cases. However, a negative test does not mean you can return to work or school early. You have to remain out for 14 days if you are identified as a close contact. So that concludes my presentation tonight. I would just reiterate that I believe we can do this safely, and I believe it's a community effort. So like Dr. Thomas encouraged us all to wear our masks, wash our hands, and watch our distance, because together, I think we can do this.
So good evening. My name is Brandon Gaskins. I'm the Chief Academic Officer, and I will give you some updates regarding our instructional models. So we currently have 4 instructional models: the separated model, the segmented model, the simultaneous model, and the quadrant model. The separated model is where the teacher completely teaches in person or completely teaches remote learning students. For example, a 5th grade teacher, or a school may have 5 5th grade teachers. 4 of those teachers would teach the in-person students, and 1 teacher would teach the virtual students. In a segmented model, a teacher will teach both in-person students and virtual students. So for example, a 6th grade ELA teacher, her 3rd period might be totally in person, her 4th period might be totally virtual. We also have a simultaneous model where the teacher would be teaching in-person and virtual students all at once. And then we also have the quadrant model where we would pool our students based on their enrollment and resources, and 1 teacher would teach students from multiple schools. We met with principals on Monday, and we met with principals today to help select their models. None of our schools will be utilizing the quadrant model currently. We will have schools using the separated model, the segmented model, and the simultaneous model. And principals will be working with teachers this week, especially on conference day, to present those models to parents. As we look at our next update, our bell schedule is very important. So as it relates to our face-to-face bell schedule, buses will arrive at our elementary schools anywhere from 7 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. As it relates to middle school, those buses will arrive at 8:10 to 8:35 a.m. The start of the school day will be 7:40 a.m. for our elementary school students, and the start of the school day will be 8:45 a.m. for our middle school students. The end of the school day will be the same for elementary and middle as it was in the past. The school day will end for our elementary school students at 2:40 p.m. and middle school will end at 3:45. So as it relates to virtual learning, we do acknowledge that the virtual learning schedule will need to be adjusted to accommodate the in-person instruction. So again, if your virtual learning schedule is adjusted, your principal or your child's teacher will reach out to you directly. As we think about classroom setup and our mitigation practices, there are several things that we just want to ensure happens in our classrooms each day to keep our adults safe as well as our students. So classrooms will be set up for social distancing using student barriers and the arrangement of furniture and desks. All students will wear masks and adults will wear masks in the classrooms. Students will participate in frequent bathroom breaks to wash their hands before and after recess and lunch. And teachers will assign seating so we will be able to do contact tracing if needed. And then something that is very important that Mr. Fisher, my colleague, will talk more about is that we will provide barriers, student barriers for all of our kindergarten through 5th grade students. Another very important part of the school day is student transitions.
We have three major transitions during any school day. That includes breakfast and lunch, specials for our elementary school students, connections for our middle school students, and of course, recess. So students will receive their breakfast in a grab-and-go location, meaning they can enter the building either from the bus or from a car rider. They'll grab their breakfast and head straight to the classroom, or they'll go straight to the classroom and grab their breakfasts later, depending on their schedule. But we will eat breakfast in the classroom. Students will eat lunch in a variety of ways. They may eat lunch socially distanced in the cafeteria, they may eat in their classrooms, or they may eat outside. That is a principal decision, and principals will be able to communicate that information to families. As it relates to specials for our elementary school students and connections for our middle school students, specials and connection classes will be held during the school day as usual. We will add additional safety and mitigation efforts just to make sure that we can have those larger classes such as chorus. Again, principals, especially at our middle school, are working really, really hard on those student schedules and your student special schedule as well as your connection schedule. This is very important. We will follow recess per our board policy. Students will receive recess every day. Before recess, students will wash their hands. After recess, students will also be encouraged to wash their hands and have those bathroom breaks. We will utilize our playscapes and our swing sets. Students will be allowed to use the playground equipment that we have, and our custodians will sanitize the end of every school. The other thing that we just want to make sure that you all are aware is that we will have staggered transitions to minimize the number of students in the hallway at one time. So as you know, in middle school usually has a transition where all sixth grade students transition at the same time to connections. In our new model, we will have staggered transitions, so one or two classes are transitioning out. Something that is also very important is how we support our students. So we have three groups of students that we want to talk about our additional support for. So our special education students, particularly our K-12 adaptive students. We want to talk about the social, emotional learning of all of our students, and then we want to talk about our after-school program. So as it relates to our K-12 adaptive special education students, they will have the option, as you know, of in-person or virtual instruction. One thing that we want to be mindful of with our adaptive students is transitioning them back in their classroom based on their IEP. So parents will have an opportunity to meet with their student's case manager to decide if a student does return to in-person instruction. Is that on a hybrid schedule or is that on a full 5-day schedule? So our case managers, under the direction of our executive director, Heidi Hill, will work with families just to make sure that we can meet the needs of our special education students, particularly our adaptive students. As it relates to SEL, we will have daily SEL lessons as we have had during virtual instruction all year, but we will also have our school guidance counselors provide school guidance lessons for our students just to make sure that they are transitioning back to the in-person instruction. And as it relates to our after-school programming, we're not currently having any after-school programming in November. We will revisit after-school programming to start either in late December or a start date in January. So at this time, I will now turn it over to our Chief of Operations, Dexter Fisher.
Good afternoon. My name is Dexter Fisher, Chief of Operations for the Clark County School District. Today we're going to talk about our custodial operations. School cleaning. School-based custodial team operate in zones, provide regular cleaning, We will touch high surface areas in all our schools. We will set signage to promote where students can go in and out of the classroom with their transitioning. Water fountains will be turned off. The students may use water refill stations. Our building operations. Schools will be cleaned each weekend. Signs are seating each day. Ensure that there will be no shared equipment in the area of the classroom. Limit use of shared classroom supplies, electronic devices, toys, books, games, arcades. Our ventilation systems are updated and frequently monitored. Transporting students. Students are practicing social distancing at our bus stops. Students are required to wear masks on the bus. All bus drivers, monitors will wear face masks, shields, and gloves. Hand sanitizer will be located on all buses. All buses are cleaned after each route. Students will sit 2 per seat, maximum 48 students per bus. Students will load the bus from the back, have assigned seats. When weather permits, windows will be cracked along with the room and emergency hatches. School buses will be deep cleaned each evening. Feeding our students. When students return to school on November 9th, meals will be provided in 2 ways. Breakfast carts will be placed in common areas for students to grab and go and eat in their classrooms. At lunch, students will go to the cafeteria line, socially distanced, and eat in designated dining areas based on the school. Virtual students. The students learning virtually, meals will be provided daily curbside locations from 11 a.m. to noon at specific schools. However, we realize because our high school students are not coming back, we will explore other avenues to get meals to those students. I would like to write down a couple of devices that will be shared in our schools. For example, every student in the Clark County School District will be given a divider. This particular divider has a clear side, but we will have clear side on both sides for students to put on their desk at all times. So each student in the Clark County School District will have a divider. We also have face shields. If a teacher wants to use face shields, they will be able to use these face shields. Also, from a science standpoint, throughout 6 feet distancing, we will put arrows in all the hallways in our schools, so when students transition out of their classroom, they can know stand 6 feet apart. We do have masks for small kids, for our pre-K, our kindergarten kids, so we'll have masks that don't have masks. We also have the clear base mask. Some people like the clear base mask, so we will also provide like PPE. As a school district, we have made a complete effort to make sure that all PPE equipment will be provided by the Clark County School District. At this time, we'll turn it back over to Mr. Lawrence Harris.
Thank you, Mrs. Rohr, Mr. Fisher, and Mr. Gaskins. I know we presented a lot of information here tonight. I do want to make sure that everyone watching and present knows that we will post copies of the presentation online. We will also post a copy of the recording. We'll also be streaming tomorrow again from Clark Central High School. We will now enter the question and answer portion of our program. And hopefully, you all can see online how to access our thought exchange. Sorry. So tonight we're using an online tool to accept questions and thoughts regarding the information that was shared here tonight. And it's very simple. You can either take a picture of the barcode or you can go to www.tejoin.com. You want to enter the 9-digit code 324-929-142. What that'll allow you to do is share your thoughts regarding our reopening, the planning that you heard here tonight from our district leadership team. I do have several questions that we have received in advance of tonight's meeting that we will be sure to answer now. And as the questions come in, we will attempt to answer them tonight. But as I stated in the beginning, if we're not able to answer your questions tonight in tonight's forum, we will post the answers and responses to as many questions as we can by Friday morning. I also want to let our viewers at home know our thought exchange will be open until Wednesday night at midnight. So if you think about questions tonight or tomorrow, as you sleep on it, as they say, feel free to enter your responses tomorrow, and we'll still be able to have those responses for our session we'll be having at Clark Central tomorrow evening. So I will go ahead and begin our question and answer portion of our program. I will bring some of our speakers back up, and they will answer some of the questions we received via email prior to tonight's session. So our first question is going to go, I'm going to bring up Mr. Gaskins and, actually I'm going to bring up Nurse Rohr first, who will be answering our first question. So each presenter will read the question that was presented via email, and then they will give their response.
Okay, the first question is, will I be notified if someone exhibits COVID-19 symptoms in my child's classroom or school? And what will the timeline be? And I did cover this in my presentation earlier, but just to quickly answer, yes, every time a student or staff member tests positive in our buildings, we will notify all families who have a student at that school. If anybody is identified as a close contact to the person who tested positive, we will provide an additional notification letting them know of their recommendation to quarantine for 14 days. The timeline on that will be as soon as we absolutely can. Sometimes it does take a few hours to get in touch with the appropriate officials or families to make our quarantine decisions. However, we will notify families in a timely and in a transparent process. Thank you.
Thank you, Nurse Rohr. We have several questions for our Chief Academic Officer around our instructional plan. So I will bring up Mr. Gaskins, our Chief Academic Officer, to answer these set of questions.
Thank you, Lawrence. So the first question is, what is the plan for online learning? Will students be given new teachers, new classmates? Will the teachers be from their school? So the plan for online learning will remain the same. Students will still receive their work through Google Classrooms, and they will use the online platforms that we provided for students. We will, in some cases, assign students new teachers to meet the needs of the schools. So as I mentioned in the presentation earlier, principals will reach out by the end of this week if your child has a new teacher. The other question was, will teachers be from their school? So yes, we met with all of our elementary school principals yesterday and our middle school principals today. All of the teachers that will provide instruction for our students will be from their home school. The next question, will in-person and virtual learning assignments be the same? Will students use the same learning platforms they've been using even when they return in person? And so the in-person and virtual learning assignments, as I mentioned, will change depending on the needs of the school. So we will have, we have about 70% of our students that have enrolled for in-person instruction, and about 30% of those students have enrolled for virtual instruction. So we will need to make some accommodations, which will cause us to lose some teachers. And we will use those same learning platforms. So we're using Google Classroom, we're using iReady. We've adopted a new math series that also has some platforms that students use, and teachers will continue to use those math platforms in their everyday instruction. The next question is related to attendance. Will the attendance requirement remain the same for virtual students? So the answer to that is yes, the attendance requirement will remain the same. So currently our attendance requirement asks that students either be present for synchronous instruction or they turn in their assignments daily for asynchronous instruction. So if a student shows up for their class via their Zoom or Google Classroom, they will be marked present. If a student completes an assignment that a teacher posts in an asynchronous environment, that student will also be marked present. And then the last question, when will a decision regarding high school students return be available? So we are talking about that with our high school principals and our district leaders pretty regularly. We will first, of course, implement our phase-in process of our K-8 students, including our Office of Early Learning and our K-12 adaptive students. And then we will revisit when we will bring back our high school students. So as you all are aware, Thanksgiving break is near, as well as our winter break. So as we think about bringing our high school students back, we probably will not set a date for a high school return until early January. We really want to make sure that when we do make that announcement, that we give parents and families and students enough time, because we know some of our high school students are working, enough time to change their schedules so they can report to in-person instruction or continue with a virtual option.
All right, thank you, Mr. Gaskins. Our last set of questions we received prior to the event will go to our Chief of Operations, Mr. Dexter Fisher.
Okay, the question for me is, how will high school students access meals and will delivery no longer be optional? Delivery will be an option for our high school. We will survey our high school students to see how many students want meals delivered to them as we move forward. Have any modifications been made to classrooms to make it safer for staff and students? The modification that has been made, first of all, is our air systems has been checked out. Fresh air is being blown throughout all our buildings. Filters are being changed on a regular basis. Cleaning and sanitizing will be done daily. Deep cleaning will be done on weekends. All students will have dividers to use on their desk. Masks will be provided to any student or staff as needed. We also will have gloves, face shields, and goggles. With hotspots, the students will remain in virtual learning. Hotspots will be provided to students who remain in virtual learning. All students have dividers, and I mentioned that earlier. All CCSB students will have dividers. That is all of my questions. Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. We will now go to the live questions that have been submitted via our thought exchange tool. Please remember that if you have not submitted your questions, you can go to tejoin.com, enter in the 9 digits you see on the screen. This is also posted on the website, and you can submit your questions. We will receive them in. We will answer as many as we can tonight, and then what we're not able to answer tonight, we will post on Friday morning. So our first questions go to our Chief of Human Resources, Ms. Lynn Duke.
Good evening. The first question, are most of the teachers who want to be able to stay home and teach remotely, or are some elected teachers being forced to show up or lose their jobs? We have worked through our principals to allow staff that are eligible for accommodations to work virtually. We have honored all of those. We are getting down to some of the ones that we're not legally required to do, but we are trying to honor those as well. So that, are we forcing people to lose their job? We are trying really hard to get people where they need to be and where they feel comfortable. We have asked staff, what would it take to make you feel more comfortable? And we feel like we have worked through a lot of those issues as well. Next question. What will the district do to ensure we have enough subs when teachers need to be out? It's no secret we often have sub shortages in this district. Our subcontractor has been working all summer to get ready for this. And we have trained many subs, and we hope we will have enough. Will we? I don't know, to be honest. It just depends on how large the need is. But what I will tell you is we are not going to double up classrooms as we have in the past when we don't have coverage for that classroom. It's not safe, so we're not doing it. We have central office staff that work in instructional services that will be deployed in an emergency. And if that happens, that's probably going to indicate that that grade level or maybe even that school be shut down the following day, because obviously that's not sustainable. We don't have enough central office staff to cover a large number of classes.
Thank you, Ms. Duke. As we look at some of the questions that are coming in, recognizing that some of the questions have been answered in the presentation, I will attempt to see if there are any questions that have come in that we have not answered. So far, questions regarding staffing, questions regarding the instructional day. Again, please remember that the presentation is online, so the information will be included there. We talked about subs. So as of now, we basically answered most of the questions that have been submitted. Again, we encourage our attendees at home to please submit questions online. We will look to answer them as the week goes on. We also encourage you to reach out to your schools, your school principals and school leaders to talk about any questions that you may have for the school staff. We are here, we are available for you. But without further ado, I'll bring up our interim superintendent, Dr. Thomas, to close us out.
As we close this evening, I just want to thank Mr. Harris and his team. They've done an amazing job of helping to prepare for this evening's event. I want to thank all of our staff volunteers who've come out, and they've given out gloves and sanitizers and temperature checks and are helping to model for us the expectations that we will have in our classrooms when we return. We also have members of our custodial staff who are here. They brought items to show some of the devices that they will be using to ensure that our classrooms are sanitized. Our transportation director is here, plant services. All of these individuals have been working diligently technology to make sure that we have everything in place that we need to have a safe opening. So I thank everyone for being here this evening. We did recognize there were some sound issues. We're learning, and we will be able to adjust to some of that tomorrow. So if you know people who missed out, either they can look at the presentation online, can also look at the live recording, and we will also be back tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock at Clark Central High School to have a repeat of this as an opportunity for people to obtain more information. Thank you all for joining in live with us this evening. Thank you for being partners with Clark County School District, and we truly are better together. Have a good evening.